Please welcome the President of Students for Life of America, Kristan Hawkins.
I can only imagine when that day comes, when I find myself.
Good morning. I'm so honored to be with you all this morning. You know, when I was asked to come today and present, and I heard about today's theme about fashionable, I immediately kind of gave a little pause of like, I'm a mom of 4. I've switched to wearing all black and just giving up. I'm probably like the worst person to talk about fashion. You can ask my staff members anytime. But then I saw what they were doing. And then I understood what that theme today is about. And I can see how in our nation, we would certainly think that goodness has gone out of fashion. It's no longer cool. But this morning, I have some good news for you. The good news is that the virtue of goodness is something that this generation of young people strives for. And I know many of us share concerns about the millennial generation. When we abolish abortion, I'm going to go and be a comedian at HR conventions all over the country. How do you work with millennials in the workplace? They want to bring their dog to work. They want to bring their pajamas to work. They have their phones always at meetings, have a hard time looking up from their phones. I know there's things about millennials that give us pause. But the good news is that they see themselves and they strive to be justice warriors. They strive to stand for justice, for truth, for equality. But men and women, our job is actually not to write them off, not to simply just say, those are millennials, let's have a good laugh at them. Our job is to invest in them. Our job is to show them that abortion is the world's greatest human rights and justice. Our job is to show them that they must invest their most precious asset, their time, to joining us to ending abortion. That they can actually make a real difference. They don't have to be stuck in those circular arguments with their aunts and uncles on Facebook every day. That there's real lives at stake, real lives that can be saved. And the better news is that they already know abortion is bad. They know it's wrong. They know there's something wrong with the act of abortion. They've seen their brothers and sisters in the womb via ultrasound. Many of them have sat and cried with a friend who's made an abortion decision. Some of them have gone into those dingy Planned Parenthoods and abortion facilities that are here in Colorado and across the country. You see, goodness did not go out of fashion. It's what is good became distorted. What is good became distorted. And every single day, the culture of death, every single day, Satan seeks to distort it even more. That's our battle. This is our battle. To define goodness for this generation. To stand up to the culture of death. To be that good that we seek. To show goodness in action. Because when they portray us as just people who are simply anti-badness, and yes, I know I just made up a word. When they portray us as simply anti-badness, we start to lose. We have to show them what we are for, that we are for this goodness. We can turn this generation of justice warriors into abortion abolitionists. 11 years ago, we noticed a problem on college campuses. and high school campuses. Young people were polling pro-choice. Planned Parenthood and their allies were running unopposed on college campuses, giving away condoms. The health centers were driving the girls to the abortion clinics. We knew that the label pro-life, the actual label of being pro-life, was even turning away students from joining us. So we did something about it. I was a little skinnier and had a lot less gray hair. And we launched Students for Life. It's the millennials that gave me all the gray hair, I promise. We launched Students for Life. And the mission was very simple. Go to where they're being targeted. Go to the high school and college campuses, right where the abortion industry is targeting your children, your grandchildren. Right where they're hoping they trap them in their predatory business cycle. Go where culture is formed. Educate young people about Planned Parenthood's actual plan for them. Educate them about the violent reality of abortion. Challenge them. Challenge them to stand up and to speak for truth and goodness. Show them that goodness, what goodness really is. It's acting selflessly on behalf of another person who you may never see or you may never meet. And inspire them to never give up, to never stop moving forward in our goal of abolishing abortion in this nation. To make sure that no woman ever has to choose ever again between the life of her child and the life that she's always dreamed of for herself. To eliminate abortion. And the best news is that through the Holy Spirit, this is working. Today, we've gone from a few dozen pro-life groups to over 1,150 in all 50 states. The pro-life generation is everywhere. We've trained more than 50,000 young people. Our Students for Life group members give more than $14 million every year in volunteer service to our pro-life movement. And what I love is when I look at those polls, and when I read those polls, the same polls that Planned Parenthood does, and I see that this generation is now pro-life. And when you read about the pro-life movement, when you read about abortion in the New York Times, the Washington Times, the Washington Post, now what you see are joyful, young, hip kids. Mostly we're freezing our butts off standing in front of the Supreme Court. But that's the picture you see. That's the message you see when you see pro-life. We've changed that narrative. But we have a lot more work to do. And I'm sorry, and I know it's early on a Sunday morning, but I'm on Central Time, so it's even later in the day, so I can get a little more bossy. We have more work to do. And we have some hard things we have to do as a movement. The first thing is, men and women, we have to transform our church. And I'm not just saying this because it's Sunday morning. We must have a church in America that seeks to actively engage in this spiritual warfare. We have to have courage to speak out. Courage to speak out against those social leftists in our churches. To say, no, this isn't right. We have to do something. We have to start a pro-life ministry here in our church because only 6% of churches in our country have a pro-life ministry. How are we going to show goodness if the church isn't doing that? Men and women, we have people every single Sunday who sit in the pews of our churches and are hurting from abortion, who are hurting from an abortion decision, who are contemplating having abortion. More than half of all women who obtain abortions in our country self-identify as Christian. More than 40% of women who have an abortion said they are an active church goer, meaning they've attended church in the past month. If every church in America got serious about ending abortion in our nation, we wouldn't have abortion. Abortion is the church's problem. And honestly, I'm getting sick and tired of having to fight against Christian administrations when we try to start pro-life groups. Do you know high school and college Christian high school and colleges are the toughest place for us to start a pro-life group? I can't call ADF for a First Amendment case because it's a private school. And usually what we hear is, it's too controversial, Kristan. No one here is having sex. That's too political. Wrong, wrong, and wrong. We have to fight, and we have to be courageous, and we have to be willing to have the discussion. I had an interesting discussion at 3:45 this morning with my taxi driver. And Jerry, we were talking, he asked me where I was going and why didn't I have a suitcase. And I said, I'm going to Denver just to speak. And he asked me what I was going to speak on. And I was like, well, at least I'll get to try out my speech a little bit on him. And I said, I'm speaking against abortion today and why Christians should care. And that started a good 40-minute discussion. And I learned way too much about Jerry's personal life. But what was interesting in what Jerry said, and we hear this all the time, right? Is I'm a Christian. I know abortion's wrong. I would never want my daughter to have an abortion, or my wife, or my girlfriend. But it's not my place. It's simply not my place to tell another woman what to do with her body. Have you all heard that before? Have you heard it from other Christians? Do you think that is goodness? Is saying, well, it's not my place. Is that goodness? The definition of goodness is to act selflessly for others. We speak out against abortion because we know what abortion does. It takes the life of an innocent, whole, living human person and destroys another life and multiple lives in the process. Is that goodness not to speak out? Is it goodness to let our friends and our family members go through an abortion because we simply didn't have the courage to speak the truth in love and compassion? Friends, that is the opposite of goodness. That's being selfish. We must speak out. I told you I was going to be bossy. I'm sorry. The next thing we have to do, we have to hold our political leaders that we elect to account. We send them to Washington, D.C. to vote for goodness and to seek goodness in our nation. We have to get rid of this big tent party idea. If you've seen what's happening in Washington, D.C., we've elected a Congress that's promised to repeal Obamacare. We've elected a Congress that has promised to defund Planned Parenthood, the nation's largest abortion vendor, who, with every single taxpayer dollar they get, their abortion stake goes up. Their contraceptive services, their preventive services go down the more federal money they get. We've elected a Congress to do this, and guess what we heard this week? We don't have the votes. We can't get it done. Men and women, this is a problem. We have to hold leaders who understand that abortion is not a preference claim. It is not a choice between vanilla and chocolate ice cream. I love them both. That is not abortion. Abortion is a moral claim. We can't tolerate people in our party, on our team, who do not agree with that, because this is what happens. This is exactly what's happening in Washington, D.C. Do you think the Democrats would allow this behavior? Do you think Nancy Pelosi would allow it? Nope. 2 years. It's been 2 years since the Center for Medical Progress and my friend David's organization exposed Planned Parenthood selling the baby parts. The parts of babies they abort. Right down the street here in Colorado. They filmed the baby and they showed David on camera. Oh yeah, here's the heart, here's the liver. How much would that be? Oh yes, we should just do it line item. It's been 2 years, and they have yet to be held account. Last week we were told in Washington, well, the will just isn't there. We just don't have the votes. Men and women, that is not goodness. That is not seeking goodness. And finally, what I would ask you today is to begin envisioning a nation without abortion. Too often, those of us who are pro-life, which I hope is every single one of us, say we're against abortion. We go out, we might pray in front of an abortion facility once a year. We give our $200 to the pregnancy center down the street once a year. But that's all we do. When I ask pro-lifers, do you think this will ever come to an end? Do you think it will ever get better? The usual response for older folks is no. And I say, why do you do it? Why do you keep doing this? Well, I'm a Christian. I have to. Men and women, we're like that high school football team. Moments before they run onto the field to play their big match, their coach tells them, great job in practice this week, guys. You gave it your all, but you're going to get your butts kicked. What do you think is going to happen to his football team? They're going to get their butts kicked. It's sports psychology. They don't believe they can win. The all-star running back who's looking for a college scholarship, he's not going to risk injury on the field for a game he thinks he's going to lose. Everyone's going to be depressed. The team's not going to be playing well. That is what we do to ourselves in the pro-life movement. We say we believe in a powerful and almighty God who spoke the world into existence, who spoke the universe into existence, but then we say with the next breath, oh, we'll never end abortion. Men and women, that's wrong. If we're going to achieve goodness in our nation, if we're going to show this generation of young people what goodness truly is, we have to believe that we can actually seek and live out and achieve goodness. I hope this conference this weekend has inspired each and every one of you to go back to your communities, to go back to your churches, to give you that courage to fight and stand for goodness, to stand against that redefinition of goodness. Because that's what the culture of death is doing every single day on college and high school campuses. That's what they're doing every single night on CNN, MSNBC, and sometimes even Fox News. That's what they seek to do. I turned 32 2 months ago. It's been difficult accepting that. I'm like the oldest person on my 40-person staff. I'm the old person on the team. I turned 32, and I was going over my financial advisor, who I've only met with once, called me, and he was lecturing me about retirement, and I was starting to kind of panic a little bit about, oh, no, this is actually going to happen, right? And Social Security probably won't be there, and we're going to be in trouble. And I know in my head I have to save, and I'm working on it. I'm allocating more money in my budget every month. But I know no matter what I save now, I'm not going to leave a bunch of money. I'm not going to be able to endow scholarships at a university or build a wing of a hospital. But I know what I want my legacy to be. I want my legacy to be my children, my 4 children, and the lives that they lead, the families that they build. And I want my legacy to be the goodness that I had. The sacrifices that I made to make sure people I will never meet, to make sure people I will never know live and lead their lives. That I brought people closer to the Word, to the truth, and to life. That's the legacy that I want to lead. So my question to you today is, will you rise up? Will you rise up? Will you do something? Will you stand for goodness? Will you speak up in your churches and in your workplaces and in your families and, yes, on your social media accounts? Will you stand for goodness? Will you speak truth, hope, and love and compassion? We need you. Our church needs you. Our country needs you. I hope you'll join me. We can abolish abortion. And with this generation, showing them what goodness is, we will. Thank you.